this tutorial series, we're going to look at running Linux to replace or run on the same computer as Windows XP. When I talk about Linux to someone who has never seen it, the first question they ask me is, what is Linux? And the answer is, it's an operating system, just like Windows or Mac OS. And we're looking at one version right here. This version is called Ubuntu Mate. And I'm running this from a live distro, meaning it's not installed on my computer hard drive. When I'm done testing this out, if I like it, I can install this version of Linux on my computer by pressing this button right here. I don't want to install this version of Linux, and we'll look at how to create a live CD in a future tutorial. In this tutorial, I want to look at a couple different versions of Linux and give you an idea of what Linux is, and that the average person will be able to use it for most of their computer needs, and how the same operating system can look very different based on the desktop you're using. What most people are going to use their computer for is to get to the internet. In Ubuntu Mate, you can get to that by clicking on the Firefox symbol right here. This will open up the Firefox web browser. I can type in the URL right here, or search on something by clicking in here. If we go down to this lower right-hand corner, we see Workspace 2, Workspace 3, and Workspace 4. Some people call these virtual desktops. If I click onto the second workspace, we have a blank screen. Clicking back to the first shows us our browser. I'm clicking on the second workspace. I'm going up to Applications, Accessories, and I'm clicking on this thing called Calculator. This is a simple calculator program. Going down to the third workspace, I'm going to open up under Office, LibreOffice Calc. This is very similar to Microsoft Excel. And if you're not familiar with how to use LibreOffice Calc, Writer, Draw, or the LibreOffice base programs, I've got a lot of tutorials out there. You can find more information about them on the Frugal Computer Guy website or the Frugal Computer Guy YouTube channel. Let's go down to the fourth workspace, and I'm going to go back to Applications and look under Sound and Video, because here's some more things that people would use their computer for. Playing music or listening to CDs, Linux has something called Rhythmbox. This is similar to iTunes. If you want to make a custom CD or copy a CD, use Brezero. And to play movies, we've got the VLC Media Player. Going under System Tools, I see something called Caja. When I go up to Places, we have Home Folder. I'm going to click on that. And we see this is the same thing we have with Windows File Explorer. We've got our desktop, documents, downloads. I'm going into Help, About, and we see that Caja is the same thing as our Windows File Explorer. If we're looking for a particular program that might not be included in this version, I can go into System, Administration, and down at the bottom we have something called the Ubuntu Software Center. A lot of people say all the programs for Linux are free. We can see right down here, this one's $3.95, this one's $2.99, this one's $2.99. So not all the programs are free, but there are many, many programs out there that can be downloaded for no cost. I'm going to close this, and let's take a look at a different version of Linux. This version of Linux is called Kubuntu, which means it's the Ubuntu operating system with the KDE desktop. I want to do the same thing with this version of Linux that we did with Ubuntu Mate. So the first thing I need to do is set up the 4 workspaces. To do that, I'm coming down to these colored balls, and I want to add a widget. The widget's name is Pager. Double-clicking that, and I can drag it down to my taskbar. On this first desktop, I'm going to open up the web browser, just like we did for Ubuntu Mate. We can see a little bouncing ball under the cursor. The KDE desktop has a few extra features like that, but they do come at a cost. They do require a little more processing time, which means your CPU has to work a little harder, and there's more programs included with the KDE desktop, which takes up more disk space. So you might not want to use the KDE desktop on an older computer. Going down to the next virtual desktop or workspace, I'm going to open up the calculator program. I don't know what that's called here, so I'm going to just type in CALC, and it shows me KCalc. And there's my calculator program. On the third workspace, we opened up LibreOffice Calc. So I'm going into Applications, Office, and to get back to all applications, I can click right up here. Office, and I want Spreadsheet. Coming down to the fourth workspace or virtual desktop, I'm going back into Applications, and then in the Multimedia. For the audio player, they have something called Amarok here. That's that iTunes equivalent. For creating CDs, they've got a program called K3B. And then to play your videos, they've got a program called Dragon Player. So we see there's different versions of software on the different desktops. Although they're using the same LibreOffice, the audio player is different, the disk burner is different, and the video player is different. For the file system, I'm going to open up the file manager. Going into Control, and down under Help, About Dolphin, we see that this one's called Dolphin, whereas Ubuntu Mate used Caja. So they're a little different. But we see the same things. We see the desktop, my documents, my downloads. And then to add in some software, we want to go to the equivalent of an app store. Under Computer, we see something called the Muon Discover, or the Software Center. And here I can type in what I'm looking for, but it's also categorized. You can go into Games, Graphics, or any of the categories down here. There's one more version of Linux I'd like to look at, and that is the standard Ubuntu operating system. This is the Ubuntu 14.04 LTS with the Unity desktop. This is the version you will see if you download Ubuntu from their website or you get Ubuntu 14.04 from a magazine. 14.04 is just a release number, just like Windows 7, Windows 8, or Windows 10. If you're not using 14.04, your screen will probably look different than this one. I like the way Ubuntu renumbers their system because they use the year and the month. So 14.04 was released in April 2014. The LTS stands for long-term release, meaning this program will be supported for a long time, usually 3 or 4 years. I prefer to stay on a single release for 3 or 4 years. Then when a fresh LTS comes along, I do a complete reinstall with the new LTS. This helps me clear out my old junk files and programs I never really used or need, but never got around to deleting. It's similar to the thing I did with Windows, only this time I don't have to buy a whole new computer. In the last two versions of Linux, we have the workspace or virtual desktops. Let's turn them on here as well. I'm going to right-click, change desktop background. I'm going to click on the Behavior tab, and they've got a little checkbox, Enable Workspaces. There we see it right down here. Let's close this. We see we're working in the upper left-hand corner. To open up the web browser, I'm going to click on the Firefox icon. And we see that Ubuntu with the Unity desktop has our most used programs over here on the left-hand side. I'm going down into the second workspace. I want a calculator. To find the calculator program, I'm going to type in CALC. After clicking on this top Unity search icon, here we have the calculator. Down in the third window, we opened up the spreadsheet program. And then we went down to our fourth workspace. And here's where we talked about the multimedia. So let's go back into our Ubuntu search and clear this out. Here we see the videos has a video player. Rhythmbox is the iTunes-like program. And for a CD burner, I don't see one. Let's type in CD. We see we've got Brasero Disk Burner. Photos. We should have some kind of photo manager. Typing photos in here, we see we've got Shotwell Photo Manager. And then to close that, the last thing we had was the Ubuntu Software Center. That's right down here. And this looks like the same we've already seen. We'll see that the window close properties are on the left-hand side of the window instead of the right-hand for Ubuntu with the Unity desktop. A lot of these things are customizable, so depending on what operating system and what desktop you're using, you'll have a totally different user experience. I hope in this video I was able to show you that Linux can be a viable alternative for the average computer user to replace their non-supported Windows XP operating system. In the next video, we're going to talk about why we call these operating systems Linux, as well as look at how you might decide on what distro is best for you.